In 1920, after nearly a century of marches, petitions, and protests, the 19th Amendment was passed, granting women the right to vote. Following the ratification of this amendment, the first wave of feminism drew to a close. Then, in 1942, when World War II began, men left to go fight for their country, leaving corporations and factories desperate for workers. This absence of men in the workplace made it necessary for women and immigrants to make their place until their return. This newfound independence that women were given offered them more freedom and financial security, which supported their families while their husbands were away. With this need for more female workers, there's a boom in advertising and propaganda promoting women to join the workforce. Thus, Rosie the Riveter and similar figures were born. After World War II, men returned to work in the factories, forcing women to go back to their roles as housewives. The post-World War II baby boom led to the awakening of a consumer culture, forcing women to take minimum wage jobs, which were often secretarial work, to support their expected American lifestyle. This was known as the double day. Exhausted women had to take on the responsibilities of the upkeep of their home and working while their children were at school.
Child, I never saw my mother read much, but the one time I saw her reading something aside from recipes or cookbooks or my homework was when she was reading The Feminine Mystique. This instant sparked my interest in The Feminine Mystique and its author, Betty Friedan. I began my research to the documentary with Betty Friedan. World War II was the time that Betty Friedan married her husband, Carl Friedan, in 1947. Since then, the two have 3 children together. During Betty's second pregnancy, she was fired from her job as an editor for a labor union due to her upcoming second maternity leave.
Well, I was leading the same kind of life that all of us were supposed to be leading in those years. You know, after World War II, I had my children. I'd had a newspaper job and been fired because I was pregnant, but then I had been so guilty working anyway that it was sort of a relief, and I wrote housewife on the census blank and tried to find this great feminine fulfillment, which I was determined to find. And I had this also thing of my mother having been so frustrated. She had started out being a woman's page editor of the small city, Peoria, Illinois, where I grew up, and then she was married to a businessman, and of course she couldn't work, and she was frustrated about not using her abilities, and she took it out on us and on my father, and then I'd had this good education, and I had the frustrations, I suppose, also of not using it. I was just living the life.
This sparked Betty's interest and the awareness for the difficult, confining life of the housewife. Friedan explained her experiences as a housewife in the interview with PBS, stating that
there are many parts of the accepted role of women at that time that were genuinely satisfying. Certainly little kids are by raising them. Cooking can be okay, as can be messing around with the decor of your house, and so on and so forth. But for my generation, and those that followed us of educated women, you could be plenty busy as a housewife. Mother when your kids were little, but that's not enough. When the lifespan of American women is approaching 80 years, as ours was, having kids is not going to take it up.
Betty was asked to conduct a survey at her alumni reunion in 1957 at Smith College in protest of the book Modern Woman, The Lost Sex, which stated that too much education was making American women frustrated in their role as women.
Betty's questionnaire did not disprove that education was overwhelming for women, but it also showed that her former classmates were unhappy with their role as housewives. With the information from the questionnaire, Betty Friedan wrote an article that was turned down by women's magazines. She had never had an article turned down, and she quickly realized that her writing was threatening to the culture of American women. This was what led to the creation of the Feminine Mystique.
Betty realized that she had to write a book because no magazine would let her publish her findings. When the Feminine Mystique came out, it brought forth a problem with no name, or more specifically, women were dissatisfied with their limited lives and their limited role in society.
Betty loved her kids, her house, and many parts of her American lifestyle. These were sacrificed for the second wave of feminism. Her children were marginalized in school and in carpools, and Betty and her husband were no longer included in social get-togethers with friends. She realized she was too threatening to other mothers and housewives who had not yet come to the terms with their lives. In Friedan's newfound popularity, she was able to bring awareness to issues that had never been discussed in popular culture. She initiated the discussion of the submissive roles of women in their daily lives, and the advertisements and average middle-class lifestyle were supported by this.
Is this all